Well, so let's get into the Individual Bondholders Forum. So on Friday, we saw the memorandum, the amended one, and many persons have particularly made comments in reference to page 11, paragraphs 7, 8, and 9. I'm sure you've seen these. What do you make of what is captured in there?
Well, for starters, just let everybody be calm. I don't think anybody should panic about that. The provisions that you have there in the memorandum, that particular part, I think they're talking about the suspension of interest, right?
Yes, suspension of interest and
payments.
not honoring maturing, principles.
What that clause simply is saying is that between now and the settlement date, any amount, any bonds that are maturing, either principal or interest, is suspended. It makes operational sense for anybody to do that. One, government is expecting to have a lot of the financial institutions move on to the DDE program. It's supposed to go there with capitalized interest that has accrued by the settlement date. So if you pay them today, you are shortchanging yourself. So there's no problem at all with what government has provided in there. What it has technically said is that those who are going to participate, they are going to capitalize all that payment due you now, between now and then, into the DDE3 program. It hasn't got anything to do with those who don't. It is after that government will be able to identify those who are not participating, mainly individual bondholders, and then honor its obligations to them. The question has been raised, isn't that a default? Technically, that does not automatically amount to a default. It is standard practice in the bond issuance process for there to be some grace period for delayed payments. If you look at government procedures, manual for borrowing, it actually states that, and this is published on the Ministry of Finance website, 2021, October 2021. It makes provision for those grace periods. If you look at the prospectus that government has been using for most of its bonds, it stopped issuing prospectus, so we're all just subscribing. So you can only look at the recent or the most recent ones coming all the way from 2015 to the recent Dachi bond and ESLA bonds. The provisions that are there are clear, that you have 15 days. A government has up to 15 days to make good on its payments, as in the delay. So government can delay 15 working days on principal and about 30 days on interest. It is allowed to delay before a breach is actually in effect. So people shouldn't be so worried. It's nothing to panic about. There's nothing untoward in our opinion that's going on. The only thing that I think would have been a little much better to do on government is to give better clarity, because it was speaking to only those who were participating. It didn't indicate the implications for those who were not participating.
Exactly.
Which I can also somewhat understand on the part of government, in that it is actually talking to those it wants to participate.
Yes, but I mean, Senyo, you're looking at it, for instance, and we know that today, maturing principal of some 4 billion Ghana cedis. Now,
actually, about plus interest, that'll be about 4.4 billion.
Yes. So, the principal is 4.1 billion. That's plus interest. You're right. Now, the government makes a point here, and paragraph 7, that says the Republic will not make principal payments in cash on the eligible bonds maturing prior to the settlement date, now February 14, as may be extended from time to time, and therefore consents to accept tenders of such bonds even after their maturity, but before the settlement date.
Exactly the case. Between now and the settlement date, you have a number of bonds that are maturing. Mm-hmm. So for those who are giving your consent, government is not honoring its obligations. It's going to determine those who haven't given their consent only after and honor its obligations. So you're going to join. So you take any of the banks. The banks are actually going to join the DDE3, the second amendment. We call it the third DDE. So for the purpose of this conversation, let's refer to it as the DDE3. The DDE3 banks are going to come. Now, banks have a lot of these 4 billion, much more than individuals that are maturing now. When bonds are being paid or serviced by the state, they don't look at who is holding who is not holding it. They pay the obligation that is outstanding. Typically, the central bank with the central bank and the Ministry of Finance will make the arrangements to make sure funds are available. The CSD or the Central Securities Depository will put up a file of all those who are holding it, and accounts are immediately credited. Ministry of Finance will be dealing with this on a bulk level. Operationally, if it has to pay today, it means it's going to pay people who are already going to join the DDE3. It means you are going to shortchange government's ability to reach its goals and targets, because this 4 billion will not flow in. But this 4 billion may just have 10%, which are for individuals who are not interested in participating in the DDE3. So because of the 400 million, are we going to hold back the opportunity to get 4 billion? That will not be good for government. So it is reasonable operationally. And it's also not a default. From automatically a default, no, not at all. It is standard practice. For all those who even take the Eurobonds, you realize that our payments actually come in after a week, sometimes 10 days, because it's actually allowed in the provisions of the standard bond prospectuses that you'd have. So it's not a problem. I realized there was a lot of agitation over the weekend. We took our time to study it clearly, engage key people to make sure we're really aligned on what it actually meant. And I think that is something that should keep everybody calm. Those who want to participate, after our town hall meeting today, you have enough information to be able to make an informed decision. If you are not participating, your interest is not injected in any form. The Finance Ministry and the Minister have been very, very clear. I'm going to honor my obligations to you. That's not a problem. His hope is that he will get more people to join. And when more people join, the individuals who may not join, it is easier for him to service them. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. We've had broad consensus, and I think the Minister of Finance has done a great job, even though it has been a bit rough, to try and get a lot of the very key institutions to really participate in this process. We have all maintained that we are not against DDE. Our problem is that involving individuals has a more catastrophic impact socially and economically for us as a country. So we don't think it should be done, unless it's going to be structured in a way that's sustainable for them.
And so far, Senyo Hosi, has it been structured in a way that is sustainable?
I think the town hall will shed some more light, but off my cuff, not so the case. One of the key things you'll be looking at is actually the legal structures for it. Unlike the other institutions that have safety nets and maybe have a regulator that can bring its weight to bear on the government, individuals have nobody. In this new arrangement, fundamentally, you realize that government is trying to tell you that you are waiving your right to actually execute any judgment on it when it defaults. So this 5 year that government has given us, we have no guarantees. It's practically the most insecure you would find. But there are other dimensions to it which we shall discuss. And when we discuss them, people will be able to make an informed decision. With what we have structured, just think about it. Government right now has deferred all its major payments outside of its current tenure. So the next government comes in and says that, look, I think that this thing is quite heavy for me at this time. And I really want to do other things. Maybe build more roads, build some school, or have some political promises that I want to follow. So I want to change it. When you do that...
Hello, Senyo. All right.
Hello.
Yes, Senyo.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We lost you a little bit. Yeah, on when you do that, yes, continue.
All right. So I'm saying that the legal structure for this DDE does not really help individuals who have no support. If the next government comes and says that I don't have enough fiscal space to cover some expenditure I think I want to do, or I want to expand my government, and I don't have enough money, so I want to defer your payment again, you cannot do anything. You can't really hold government to proper accountability, apart from just public advocacy. You go to court, you win, you can't enforce it. That does not inure sustainably to the benefit of individuals. Individuals are at a higher legal risk under the proposed DDE than the original bonds that they currently have, which gives them both judgment execution rights as well as subject the government to the jurisdiction of our courts. So we find legal weaknesses in there. But there are other issues on the economic side that we'll also be discussing at the town hall today at 12:30. We have shared the Zoom link. It's a virtual meeting, so you can actually join in from your office, listen in, and also make your inputs and be effectively guided. We particularly have just today and tomorrow for us to make a decision. I think it would have been better if government had brought it out a little earlier. And some of these issues that we've raised already, at least it should have shared some perspective on it. Unfortunately, during our engagements with government, we never really discussed this particular because we thought the public advocacy on the matter was actually clear.
Great. Senyo, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're grateful.
All right, pleasure, mine.
Coffee in your cup and joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy 99.7 FM. Coffee in your cup and joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy 99.7 FM.
Well, so Raymond, you've listened to Senyo, you've read the document itself.
Far from over.
The question really is this: how many people within the current situation would want to roll over their maturing bonds?
I guess many people are waiting for their advisors to advise them on the way forward, but I get the impression that this is very far from over. I mean, the today to tomorrow kind of deadline is going to generate its own difficulty, and I don't have a difficulty with government extending it again because I think that's what government has been doing anyway. The president is very optimistic that by March we should be able to fix this at all levels so that we can get the deal. But as to whether currently the conversation is that individual bondholders are willing and waiting to just participate heavily in this and have their belief in the system, there are some that are not as optimistic as Senyo Hosi has been putting it. There are some that are very worried about the trends and how it's likely to play out for them and all of that. Hopefully, maybe when all the views come to play, at least at the level of the individual bondholders, let's not forget, government is giving the same deal, at least that's what they promised to do previously, to the collective investment schemes and also those what called bonds in trust accounts. The mirror game here is when you aimed for complete exemption and you are being presented with the current plan that's been given you, would you go for it? Are you better off? When government indicated that there are problems with tradability, even though you were told to dismiss that particular claim because there won't be any problems with tradability, there are also others that say don't be too quick to dismiss it because the potentials are there. So I'm just looking at how all of this can be concluded. The conversation we're having today should be happening like a week before now, which would have been sensible because we've taken enough time for people to digest all of this, consult people, and finalize decision making. Up to this point, it's rushed, it's a bit compact, and I know that by the end of tomorrow, we may not be able to conclude the conversation. And that big block of individual bondholders that are demanding exemption, but being given some other deal, will they call this sacrifice? As they have said previously, they have done with sacrifice. In fact, today, we expect the pension groups within this to start their picketing at the Ministry of Finance. They say nothing in the current engagement answers the question they'll be asking all this while or gives them the relief that they've been seeking. So they'll use the next 2 days, which is also the period they have to actually sign on to this, to continuously press home their demands. And having these old people go picket there will be a different sight and a different story about a country that's seeking to race against time and finish this by tomorrow. So there are a lot of moving pieces on this. Hopefully, we get to some finality, because I'm sure that by today, if the individual bondholders' engagement go well, they may make a decision collectively or advise people on what to do. It doesn't appear that that's likely to be. I'm even suspecting that they may not all come to the same conclusions, because I hear very different views on what should be the way forward. People who do not have the same level of optimism like others have shared about what's currently happening in the system. So, well, I'm just not sure how we are going to go about this, but it appears, whether we like it or not, by the end of this month, we need to conclude this.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, the point is this. If you have your bonds maturing today, I doubt how many people would want to
Roll over.
or buy new bonds that are coming in based on all the things that have been happening. I mean, a lot of people have called in and have said, just give me my money
Yeah.
and I'm better off.
Because you're not sure.
So if give me my money and government says, hold on a minute, maybe some of you may want to put this in, as Senyo is making the point. I have my own doubts. I think also that for a lot of the people, part of this, it's more of something to convince you to sign. Because the uncertainty around this would compel you to also get onto it and say, so if I am not sure of what is going to happen to me tomorrow, why don't I,
leave my money with.
still leave my money with government, get some certainty with my money. So why don't I just sign on to this debt exchange? After all, it started from 0% this year. Now it's moved to 10%. Why don't I take the 10% and move on with my life? After all, it's 5 years. I mean, and the other point here is that, you have to do your own analysis. And for me, the most important thing is after the town hall meeting, everybody must learn how to calculate his money. Do your time value of money analysis, discount it as much as you want to do, and note how many years, the bonds that you bought, what's the tenor? Are you better off taking a 5-year, new bond, for instance? Do your own calculation and decide. But for me, I still think that individual bondholders, in fact, it wouldn't hurt if individual bondholders had been exempted from this.
You know what? When the two professors had done their report, right? When Alec Plim and Safwa had put together that report, and how they are considered that people were better off under the 0% rate, they were better off with 100% haircut on their principal compared to what they were being given. I am interested in knowing what they will think about the current arrangement on the table, the 10% that's actually beginning this from 0 to 10. Is that a better plan than a 100% haircut on principal? Those ones would inform the grouping on how to. But I guess really we've come to a point where people who only cared about where their money was going now would have to be more finance gurus on their own and be making decisions that previously you just take advice from your advisors, some financial advisors, on how to go about this. It's a bit complex a space that if you do not get the right advice as we speak, and the people who should be advising you should not be people of interest or people who have other levels of interest in this particular matter. That is how serious this condition is. Hopefully it can be resolved.
Now, one professor just sent me a message. That'll be my final comment on this. He says, the announcement by government is not procedures to take advantage of. This is a signal to the markets.
Okay.
So you can see government trying to flex its muscles.
Yeah.
Telling you, get on. If you don't, well, we shall see.
Tradability.